Hi, I'm Jamie De Souza, a Senior Associate in the Commercial Dispute Resolution and Litigation Department at Trowers. Welcome to the latest of our 10-year in 10 stories in celebration of the Trowers Birmingham office 10-year anniversary. Today, we will be discussing net zero and the manufacturing sector. We will talk through some of the challenges as well as the opportunities for the sector with a real focus on West Midlands manufacturing businesses. I have the pleasure of being joined today by Richard Pyatt, a director of CR Plus, an energy and engineering consultancy with base in the West Midlands and Wales. CR Plus are the lead partner for the South Wales Industrial Cluster Planning Project and a partner in the Repowering the Black Country Industrial Cluster Planning Project. Rich, thanks for joining me today. Please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about CR Plus.
Hi Jamie, thanks for having me and thanks for inviting me to do this interview with you for Trowers. So yes, as you said, I'm Richard Pyatt. I'm one of two directors for CR Plus Limited. CR Plus are an energy and engineering consultancy. We've got bases in South Wales and in the West Midlands, which is where I'm talking to you from today. We're primarily an energy and engineering consultancy servicing the manufacturing sector, ranging from light manufacturing through to heavy industry. So with our base down in South Wales, we service heavy industry, steelworks, refineries, and all sorts of different processes. And in the Midlands, servicing more the SME market. So the sorts of manufacturers you'd expect to see in regions such as the Black Country. We do service industry across the whole of the UK. We also service other sectors, so we provide energy solutions for places such as universities. We consider aspects wider than just energy and carbon. We do look for opportunities in materials and the circular economy. That's primarily on the back of us forming our lead in these net zero carbon clusters. We look for tangential business drivers on waste reduction, process improvement and quality improvement, and also maintenance improvement on manufacturing processes. So yeah, being one of two directors, I'm actually based in Sutton Coldfield in the West Midlands. So I've been with the company since a year after they started in 2005, and I've got a keen interest really in seeing a future for manufacturing in my local region.
Yeah, being born and bred in the Black Country myself, I've got a very keen interest in the manufacturing and engineering sector and acted for a number of manufacturing companies over the years. So what does net zero carbon mean to CR Plus? And I suppose from there, what do you think it means to the manufacturing sector as a whole?
Yeah, so as I've said, we service mainly the manufacturing sector. So net zero carbon, I mean, if I just start by explaining the net zero carbon target, in 2019, the UK government replaced its commitment to reduce emissions to 80% from 1990 levels to a commitment to achieve net zero carbon by 2050. So net zero, as opposed to an 80% reduction or carbon neutrality, is basically the balance between greenhouse gas emissions produced and the amount removed into the atmosphere. So we achieve net zero when the amount added is no more than the amount removed in simple terms. So we can do this by greenhouse gas removal from the atmosphere, but first and foremost, we need to do that by reducing the emissions that we're adding from human society. So in our perspective from industry, that's the reduction of carbon emitted into the atmosphere from industrial processes.
So as a firm, I know we've been advising a lot on the energy sector, and particularly in areas such as housing and regeneration. And a lot of businesses and industries have their own pathways and interim targets in place, and likewise so do regions. So, yeah. So what are the key pathways and interim targets that you see?
So at a national level, the Climate Change Committee advised the government on carbon budgets, interim budgets. There are a number of different budgets, which we're in the middle of one at the moment. So what's recently been sort of accepted to be brought into legislation is a 78% reduction relative by 2035. So what that effectively means is we've brought the original 80% target forward by 15 years, which is absolutely the right thing to do. But what it means is that action's needed now. We can no longer go through repetitive planning stages and think about significant infrastructure and energy changes in the 2030s. We've got to be acting in the 2020s to actually have any chance of reaching these targets. Also, COP26 is being hosted in Glasgow this year, so climate change has never been higher on the agenda. within the UK. And as you say, underneath the UK national, then we've got regional targets. So the West Midlands Combined Authority have set a 2041 net zero carbon target. And finally, then corporations, so industrial sites and businesses themselves will set their own targets for sustainability and for carbon reduction. So we're seeing many that are committed to a 2030 decarbonisation target.
Yes, I think with the challenges that a number of businesses, particularly the SME and OMB sector and manufacturing industry as a whole, have suffered over the last 18 months. This is, I suppose, a big challenge, but a great opportunity to reassess, to get things back on track, to make something sustainable for the future.
Basically, yeah. I mean, industry currently accounts for about between 16 and 18% of all UK emissions. That's about 60 to 70 million tonnes of CO2 equivalents. And the big challenge for industry is it falls into what's being termed the difficult to decarbonise, particularly the decarbonisation of heat and high temperature heating processes within industry. It's just there's no one size fits all. There's different solutions for different sectors. So that's what industry really needs support with, and that's what we're effectively now aiming to do with our company.
And talking about the West Midlands and areas like the Black Country, obviously we've got such a strong manufacturing heritage. I noticed, for example, the West Midlands Combined Authority have recently reported that low carbon manufacturing and goods is the fastest growing sector in the region, and it's employing over 100,000 people. So there's clearly signs that things are definitely going in the right direction, but equally there's a lot to be done.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That sort of improvement is often publicised. We've got the recent news about the potential for a Gigafactory in Coventry, for example. So everyone's heard in the news about the potential, this big transition to electric vehicles. Lots of debate around the technological choice and the mix of different technologies there, but there's going to be a supply chain potential. So why couldn't regions such as like the Black Country, for example, be part of that supply chain to the electric vehicle sector, amongst others? We've got the Black Country, which is sort of known as the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, currently there's a £2 billion turnover per annum in the subsectors of construction and metals processing. So again, we want to see new and growing supply chain and manufacturing processes for this sort of green revolution, but we want to see a future for these legacy sectors such as metals processing.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's about becoming the new green industrial revolution, isn't it? And powering with the legacy businesses, the strong heritage that the region has, and not losing that moving forwards. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a strong future for industry. Fundamentally, we want to make sure we don't see industry decline. Industry decline results in territorial carbon emission reduction, of course, but that doesn't help on a global perspective, because the manufacturing has to exist somewhere else. And from a UK perspective, we become more reliant on imports, which, as we've seen with COVID and Brexit, is a riskier position to be in. So really, we want to see this future for industry. And from our perspective, from an energy perspective at least, what we need to help support industry with is aspects such as access to lower cost electricity, access to sort of affordable and alternative gaseous and liquid fuels such as hydrogen. And also, importantly, the thing that often gets forgotten is a means to changing industrial processes in a de-risked manner, because a lot of these processes they are suppliers to various sectors, and they need to meet certain quality parameters. They need to reach a certain production throughput. They will have a labour force that will be used to operating processes that have existed in a certain way for decades. So net zero carbon means change, which means risk. So they need support really in that whole area.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that change of approach in industry, and things like servitization is another prime example of looking at ways for manufacturing businesses to reskill and refocus is going to be key over the next few years. So Rich, talk through some of the activities that you've specifically been involved in supporting industry's route to net zero carbon in this part of the country, and what also needs to be done to capitalise on those opportunities. For example, specifically some of the stuff you're doing in the Black Country.
Yeah. So as I've said, we're active all over the UK with focuses in South Wales and the West Midlands. So if I focus at this point on a particular project that we're actually involved with at the moment in the West Midlands, so that's a project called Repowering the Black Country. So that's an Innovate UK funded project of which we're one of 8 partners. That's a project funded by Innovate UK under the Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge. And what it's effectively achieved is it's put the Black Country on the map as one of 7 UK industrial clusters, with the simple brief being to achieve and form a cluster that can decarbonise by 2040. All of these clusters have different aspects to them. The other clusters are typically coastal based. So they'll be predominantly based around carbon capture storage and large scale hydrogen production. So we've got a project here that is effectively different because we're focusing on an inland cluster. It's the only inland cluster. And we're also focusing on the sort of the smaller sector of manufacturing, the SMEs and the sort of medium-sized businesses, of which if we're going to achieve net zero carbon, we need to include a solution for those as well. And these central regions of the UK, otherwise we'll achieve an 80% target, which is no longer what's needed. So the project as well is a consortium, so it's being led by the Black Country LEP. It's all about involving a wide range of stakeholders. So the project leads is working closely with the Mayor's office. So that's to ensure that the Black Country secures the significant investment that's going to be needed. Net zero carbon is also going to cost a fair amount. There's no quick win here. It's been integrated into the West Midlands 2041 zero carbon campaign. And just to finish on it, the economic opportunities in the zero carbon transition are huge, in referring back to your comment about low carbon goods and services, across all sorts of sectors as well. So that project is a 2-year project, which is a cluster planning phase project where we're trying to stimulate further inward investment and identify sort of sub-projects that we can get moving rapidly to demonstrate that the SME sector in this part of the country can be decarbonised.
And I think, like you say, it's really important that those SMEs, those OMBs, those slightly smaller businesses are not left behind, because they are all part of such a wider supply chain and critical to manufacturing as a whole. So all of this sounds great for the West Midlands, but ultimately, I suppose, to achieve net zero carbon, a new energy revolution, the green industrial revolution has to be achieved in tandem, I suppose, with a change in manufacturing from a predominantly linear economy to a more circular one. And I suppose the challenge is how we get that over the years to come, and within the time.
Yeah, and it's an exciting project to be involved with, because obviously our specialism we're bringing in is the energy and engineering aspects, which I can talk about a little bit more precisely in a second. But we've got quite an interesting mix of partners. So one of which, for example, is Warwick Manufacturing Group, who are bringing in their academic expertise around the circular economy and working with the rest of us to see where we can practically bring some examples of integrating some circular economy aspects into the existing mix.
So, yeah, that sounds great. So why don't we talk a little bit about the current stage of the project and also the vision of what you're trying to achieve as part of this cluster?
Yeah, okay. So this is just over 2-year planning project, but we're trying to actually bring some tangible, practical outputs from it. So our role is primarily to conceptualize and design 4 use cases for what we've branded as zero carbon hubs. So if you'll let me just share a PowerPoint slide at this point, I can walk you through what these hubs are.
That'd be great.
Okay, Jamie, so you should now be able to see a short animation that I've prepared, which is effectively explaining our Repowering the Black Country Zero Carbon Hub concept. So before I run this, just to explain it, a zero carbon hub, simply put, is distributed generation and efficient use of power, heat, and alternative new fuels such as hydrogen. We're technology agnostic within this project, so we're considering a totally broad mix of different technological solutions and solutions integrated together as well. As I've already explained, we're incorporating circular manufacturing and circular materials principles strongly within this. In fact, it's one of the differentiators we believe within this this cluster project compared to some of the others. So we're interested in minimisation of waste, optimisation and the efficient use of residual waste streams, and trying to provide a pathway to show how new manufacturing can grow around existing legacy manufacturers while all are decarbonising together. So our approach to that, which this animation attempts to explain, is to actually get to 4 sensible and practical and achievable, importantly, use cases. We're trying to engage with, first, an anchor site. So you mentioned earlier, Jamie, that we do have some more energy intensive manufacturers in the Black Country. So we're targeting those with effectively over a certain threshold of electricity, gas, other fuels, or a mix of. And then also
really large energy users, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. But also there has to be a sensible mix of drivers. So there has to be sort of fundamental reasons why this business would want to sort of get involved with us on this project. So that could be current constraints on power supply, for example. It could be a benefit that they could get from converting some of their process heating, which would give them a quality improvement, for example. So, like I say, we're trying to get some practical benefits for an anchor business within this project. So from there, we're sort of looking within what you could imagine to be an industrial estate. So there'll be a local estate where it's realistic to expect local infrastructure can supply a mix of those industrial processes from what you're seeing here as a equivalent of an energy centre. But this is a more integrated, this is an energy centre considering potentially power, heat, but also these alternative new gaseous and liquid fuels such as hydrogen. So what you'll notice here is then we're trying to incorporate some circularity of materials, some circularity of waste, which can then be circular across the region, not just within this specific estate. And another interesting partner that we've got in the team, actually, their focus is on intensive urban agriculture. So that would be things such as vertical farming, which would take waste vectors. So that could take a portion of electricity, heat, and then also CO2 to actually grow local produce for the local economy as well. So just to continue then, with a hub, this could exist within just an estate, or this could then start to look wider to service nearby other industry. But also, as a further differentiator for this project, is looking to how we can match the energy needs and the decarbonisation demands for other sectors. So by that we mean there might be an amount of low-grade heat, for example, that there is no sensible use for within this industrial mix. And that could go, for example, to things such as hospitals, schools, and other energy vectors could go to things such as transport. So these hubs could start to link to these rapid charging EV stations that have got to start to be integrated into the mix, or even renewable liquid fuels that could support HGVs, for example.
So the concept is fascinating, but I imagine it's not straightforward for a manufacturer currently at the starting line.
No, and this is the big challenge. Net zero carbon, as I said earlier, fundamentally means change, and change tends to frighten people. Change means risk. So there has to be an acceptance that there's an investment in de-risking these industrial processes to actually enable them to even start taking these steps. Otherwise, there's going to be a reluctance to want to do anything until it's sort of proven elsewhere, which, again, in our opinion, is not the right thing for the region. So collaboration is the key word then. So collaboration was obvious and evident from the sort of what may have appeared complex in the mix of arrows that I had on that animation there. So collaboration needs to exist between these industrial sites, but also then the energy technologies, the generators, transmitters and distributors in the region, neighbouring manufacturers in the same sector and in different sectors, and then also organisations such as the local authority and the LEP and regulatory bodies.
So yeah, they all have their own challenges, but like you say, that collaboration is, I suppose, critical to that type of model of change in the manufacturing sector. So looking at, I suppose, the SME and OMBs that you're working with at the moment, where would you like to be in 10 years' time, or where would you like to see some of these net zero carbon hubs in place?
I mean, we want to achieve our primary objective within the project. We will achieve that, which is designing and presenting 4 example zero carbon hubs by the end of the project, which is the start of 2023. That won't be success to us. We will want to see and work on these being taken forward to be realised as actual projects. So we want to see some of these manufacturers actually having a pathway that then they can start to follow. And broader than that, we just want to continue to be able to generally help SMEs in the region move towards net zero carbon.
So it really is a great opportunity for the region and the sector as a whole to move forward. And I suppose there are some real strengths and and differentiators for this particular region, particularly with the heritage of the manufacturing industry within the West Midlands.
Yeah, so the manufacturing heritage is definitely a strong point. There's skills within the region, and we want to retain those skills and grow those skills. There's the existing sort of manufacturers that exist there. There's the potential. There's the history with the automotive sector, the metals sector. But as I've explained in the context of the other clusters, this being the only inland cluster and a cluster focusing on SMEs and, as you've said, owner-managed businesses, it is another differentiator. So if we can maintain a focus with things like the circular economy aspects that we can bring into this, we can start to present solutions for how this final sector, this last 20%, rather than the big 80%, how they can actually get there. So the Midlands being effectively central to demonstrating that for the rest of the UK is a great opportunity. And just to finish as well, everyone would say at the moment doing nothing is not an option. Which is an easy thing to say, but effectively in the Midlands, it can result in sort of a further declining in industry. So it's definitely not an option.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We can't be left behind as a region or an industry as a country as a whole. So I suppose concluding then, it's a really exciting opportunity for change for a number of reasons. Albeit it's challenging times ahead for the manufacturing sector simply because of the way in which the industry works and what's required. I suppose for me, I really look forward to seeing where you're at the end of the next 2 years of the Repowering the Black Country project, and again seeing where we are as a region and as a sector in 10 years' time. Rich, I'd like to just say thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and look forward to catching up soon.
Thank you, Jamie.